Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final closing plenary session of the conference Transition to the Green Economy. It's been 2 days since we gathered here on this conference, and I think we are for a very pleasant conclusion. Before we get down to business, I have two very nice obligations, and they are connected to the side events of this conference. There have been, among other things, 2 competitions going on that you probably, I hope so, you noticed. One was the photographic competition called My City, where various photographs have been in place, and you have been able to vote for them on the page of European Environmental Agency, who was organizing the competition. And I'm glad to announce that this is the winning picture. It's called Leviation, and it's by an Italian girl, Erika Zoll. Congratulations. The other competition is called Green World, and it was about child's drawings that you were able to see on my left side and vote for them on Slido during our conference. And we also have a winner, and it's this drawing by a girl named Klára Brišková, who is 8 years old. And the picture is called When Spring Came. So congratulations again, and of course the prizes will be coming in some way or another. Now, let's get down to business. Let's get discussing the green economy again. What we were trying to do here for the past 2 days was to create a forum for discussion and exchange of ideas connected to the transition to the green economy. We were discussing instruments for implementation, including financial instruments, and we were discussing also role for research and innovation in this process. We were also trying to showcase some best practices, some good examples of innovations and innovative solutions that are already in place, either in Europe or worldwide. So, to sum up, we were trying to formulate any ideas possible that could accelerate the pace of this transition, which was one of the points of the discussion in various sessions where we discussed whether we are moving fast enough. And on the other hand, there were some concerns raised about whether the pace that we already have isn't a little bit too fast, because it, of course, for many stakeholders is a reason for concern. Let me now welcome to the stage our rapporteurs from our parallel sessions that we had. It was 6 of them, and the role of the rapporteurs was to sum up the conclusions from this session so that we can work with the conclusions further, so that the conclusions do not stay here in the Congress Hall and in other rooms, but they will really feed the discussion further. So I would like to welcome, first of all, the rapporteur from the first Policy Action Session, which is Mr. Jaroslav Pietraš, Director General from the General Secretariat of the Council of the European Union. Welcome. Then we have a rapporteur for the second session, which was dedicated to research and knowledge action, Mr. Ivan Haščić from OECD, from Empirical Policy Analysis Unit. The session Civil Society Action was covered by Mr. Matthias Puringer, Director for International Cooperation and Strategy, the Regional Environmental Center for Central and Eastern Europe. Welcome. The session Cities, Regional and Local Authorities Action was covered by Madame Dana Švihlová, who is a lecturer at the Faculty of Economics at the University of Matej Bel in Banská Bystrica, Slovakia. The session Business and Investment Institutions Action was covered by Mr. Jim Curry, a co-chairman and senior advisor of Burson and Marsteller. And the sixth session, Innovation for Transition, was covered by Mr. Tomáš Turecký from DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission. So now we have our panel complete, and we can proceed to what were the messages that mostly strikes you as rapporteurs, and which are probably, from your perspective, most worth remembering. So let me start with Mr. Pieters.
Thank you very much. It's my duty to report from a session titled Policy Actions. Obviously, there is a difficulty. In 4 minutes' time, I have to report the session which was 2 hours long. Therefore, those who have participated will consider my report as selective and simplified. Those who have not participated will not be provided with the depth, with the diversity and the richness of the debate. What I did is also not only report, but I also looked at how people were speaking, and I made a kind of a word count. I counted words that were most frequently used. I have selected several words to look upon, and I noted them. Among those words, there were challenges, consistency or inconsistency, framework, opportunity, transition, development, potential, externalities, long-term. And I was surprised to see that the most frequently used word was opportunity. Opportunity. If you apply psychoanalysis approach to this issue, one would say that in minds of the speakers, there is a deeply hidden desire that things will happen and the dreams will come through. So it's a kind of desire which is leading them to speak about it. And obviously, in order that it is going to happen, the policy actions are indispensable. And everyone was underlining that. Panelists and participants in their comments and questions have very often underlined that there is a need for coherent policy actions and coherent approach to transition to green economy. There are still many inconsistencies in government policies which are affecting businesses and their decisions, but they have to be consistent, mutually coherent, and leading to the same direction across various policy fields, including finance, taxation, industry, transport, agriculture, etc. It is important to note that policymakers are setting trends, indicating to everyone orientation the transition to green economy will evolve. It may require establishment on long-term targets as a tool to give such indications and to clarify how policies and where policies will be leading. Once direction is established, politicians should be able to consistently follow it up. As one of the speakers have said, in order to achieve cleaner, greener, smarter development, we have to follow commitments. Policy actions which are clear and well communicated can be better implemented. It is important for guiding and affecting behaviors. Without it, businesses would not act rationally, or to put it differently, they would rationalize activities within the given frameworks, regulations, or circumstances. They will navigate between existing elements, not really delivering what they should do. It was mentioned by Commissioner that companies have expiry dates, but it was mentioned in this session that managers and as politicians have got even shorter expiry dates, and they have to look what they deliver to the respective constituencies. Therefore, it is so important to have a proper framework in place. The long vision can be best ensured when it's fixed within the legal framework. It could be best ensured if they are anchored in international agreement. The example of Mercury agreement was given. And then the EU could implement it by developing EU acquis, and finally, member states by transposing this framework into national legislation. In such a way, international agreements provide good base for predictable European and national legislation. However, practice on ground is also important, as legislation can be, as one said, complex, detailed, patchwork, and therefore involvement of many various stakeholders in the process of developing policy actions is not only advisable but is indispensable. Such an involvement of the stakeholders in a wide sense and such a dialogue could help to build understanding, trust, and could feed back to formal process. There's also a need to balance between mandatory legislation and government encouragement to voluntary actions. Sometimes bottom-up approach is equally effective as legally enforced regulatory provisions. There was a dose of discussion on availability of information enabling assessment of results. Greenwashing should be avoided, but there is a lot of sources of good methodologies for data and information. The role of education was mentioned already in an introductory speech by Secretary of State Norbert Kurilla, and I think it was also repeated in a number of places that education is a very important component, and it should start very early at building understanding for the transition to green economy.
You would need to conclude.
And finally, there was a maybe funny proposal, but I think it is speaking, a proposal to establish Ministry for Future as integrating all the policies that would deliver future of this economy. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Pietraš. And we will move to you, Mr. Haščić, for research and knowledge action.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. So in the second parallel session on research and knowledge actions, many subjects were covered, but here I focus on the common themes and particularly those that you could call actions. So a summary of the key messages could look like something like this. In order to accompany the transition towards greener economy, we need to introduce policy incentives to stimulate the innovation and encourage search for greener alternatives through a range of policies and measures, such as environmental taxes, or by removing redundant regulations, so-called red tape, if applicable. These incentives should be adequate, reflecting external costs, and predictable, considering investors' planning horizon, and their distributional or social impacts should be addressed. This was mentioned also by several speakers. And this should be addressed through targeted measures. And such policies will then help generate technological, organizational, institutional innovation and behavioral changes by consumers. The second message I would highlight would be around, there was talk about vested interests, incumbents, etc. I would introduce it by saying that governments need to think about how to overcome lock-in and path dependency in carbon-intensive and resource-intensive systems. And so one of the ways would be, for example, by phasing out fossil fuel subsidies or other environmentally harmful subsidies that generate these vested interests, and they might undermine policy reform. They also should remove barriers to market entry and exit that favor incumbents and prevent inefficient firms to leave. And again, such measures have the potential to speed up the adoption of greener innovation. So that's why it's very important. I'll leave it here.
Thank you very much. We'll move to civil society action, to the panel that discussed this topic, mainly from the business perspective, as I understand. Mr. Puringen, please.
Thank you. We had a very dynamic session on civil society actions, obviously. Given the complexity of the transition to the green economy and the high stakes that are involved, we concluded it's all the more important that citizens have a say, and especially in our region. Civil society is a diverse group representing the interests of society. Stakeholder engagement and societal buy-in are fundamental for the transition to green economy, and that goes beyond participation in meetings, but as helping civil society become equal partners for development and implementation. Civil society is and must be involved in the transition to a green economy in multiple ways. This means civil society actions through advocacy, facilitation, promotion, education, and information. More specifically, we found out in our session, to make the transition happen, the role of civil society is key in changing economic paradigm and boosting changes in consumer behavior, further shaping powerful alliances with businesses, building bridges with labor unions, providing for continuity, exploring and piloting social and technological innovation potentials, enhancing connectivity between research and policy making, organizing social debates and public opposition, and thus triggering policy responses, assuming a watchdog role, supporting information exchange and awareness raising, and finally enabling a more holistic take on the transition to a green economy. Those were the main points.
Thank you very much for your summary. We'll move it to you. Mrs. Shrihlova, you covered the topic or the session of cities, regional and local authorities and their action in the transition. So what conclusions do we have from there?
Thank you. Hello to everybody. Panelists in our panel were representative of European and international bodies, academia, local authority, and private developer company. In the session was highlighted the view on the local and regional authorities, which are have a unique position because they are closest to decisions which affect people directly. The panelists presented a positive attitude to the role of local and regional authorities in process to the transition to green economy, and they seen it as an opportunity for local and regional development. For example, this process can bring the benefit to change and revitalize cities, benefit from smart technologies, increase energy and water efficiency, or green infrastructure can help to mitigate local resources. Discussion was focused on how to do it, what cities should do, and what they need. So what they need, it is important that EU policies support regional and local sustainable development and green economy. From this point of view, it's necessary to simplify and focus program and financial schemes to motivate local and regional authorities to use them in transition process. The local authorities also have to create strategies and policies. Participation and involvement of citizens and key partners are crucial. Process toward the green economy needs strong political behind actions. Local authorities should be creative and use instruments which are available or the new instruments what are prepared already. For example, reporting and monitoring to understand process, risk management, effective financial schemes, support sharing economy, sustainable technologies, and public procurement, and so on. For the development, it's important to set clear regulations, integrating planning systems, and a clear zoning in master plans. Importance of leadership and platforms to discuss problems and exchange the good practices was discussed also. This platform should be created on the international level and also on the local level with the key partners. They should create positive environment to encourage local initiatives. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Shrihlova, very much for your conclusion. Mr. Curry, you have been following today's session on business. There's been a lot of comparison in financing to blood. That's one line connecting the discussion. Please.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, the keynote speaker started off by saying that the blood in the system of green economy has to be money, which I think kind of brought everybody up short. But he was right in the sense that he said funding is absolutely crucial. How we fund things is absolutely crucial. And who are the players? And the players range all the way across from governments, through banks, financial institutions, strategic investors, all the way to the consumer. And the choices the consumer makes are also very important. Moving on, I think one of the key slogans, as it were, that came out of the meeting was that the EU is accustomed to talking the talk, but doesn't walk the walk. And one of the panel members, one of the audience rather, came in and corrected that and said, it's not about talking the talk. We can't even talk the right talk. We're not looking at this at the right level and in the right way. And I think that came through as a kind of theme almost. So, one, what are the actions that government need to take? Fulai Sheng, the main speaker, was absolutely clear that there needs to be a plan for transition at government and EU level. And that is the context in which others will become prepared to act. It will help to give the degree of predictability that investors need, that businesses need, in order to have the confidence to move forward. Legislation, and we came upon this at the first day, on day one, is far too prescriptive. It's far too product-orientated. It's not trying to change the system, and it needs to be done in a much smarter and in a much more constructive and imaginative way in order to deliver the right results and create the right conditions, because it's government's job and the EU's job to create the right conditions for business to enable them to be able to act. Taking some examples of, apart from legislation, we moved on to taxation. Taxation, a big issue in terms of distorting the system. Taxation distorts the system in relation to no VAT on kerosene fuels for aviation, for example, in relation to the plastic bags, renewable plastics being treated differently from new plastic, and so on and so forth. A number of examples were rolled out. The taxation system needs to be much more focused and targeted in a way which is acting with the needs of a green economy. State subsidies are possibly necessary at the beginning in order to pump prime activity, but even there, the state aid rules often at EU level intervene in a way which does not encourage state governments to perhaps use the pump priming activity which they need in order to generate the confidence for more private investment. So reviewing the state aid rules in the light of the circular economy, in the light of the green economy, is an absolutely crucial step forward in this. I've talked about tax systems. What advice was there for regulators? One of the advice, a bit of the advice given, was that they need to look at regulation not purely through the lens of the environment, but also through the lens of the socio-economic dimension, and raise the sights above the level of dealing with specific problems in order to help to create a system which will deliver much more and give people the courage and the enthusiasm to move in the right direction.
You would need to conclude?
Lots of examples came up. One of the key issues which for me came through was that the EU is falling behind, Europe is falling behind in delivering the industries and the production needed to feed the green economy in terms of the transportation industry and the energy industry. Take the example of new batteries. Most of the new batteries which are going to be needed are being produced in China, Asia, the US, not in Europe. So there's a huge message going through from our group to the EU and to the state governments and to central governments to get their act together and create the conditions for a green economy to be moved forward, because the investment is there. The money is there, but the money will not be used unless the conditions are right.
Thank you very much. So if the finances and investment are the blood in the transition, the innovation, maybe we can compare to a blood pressure. It will be another important driver. And you covered that topic. Please, Mr. Turecki.
I don't know about the blood pressure, but I will be definitely by the time pressure as the last of the rapporteurs. Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to actually report from the last group, which brought together a range of interesting speakers, both from innovative companies, from research, also from innovation supporting agencies. It was particularly exciting that two of the speakers were coming from eco-innovative companies from the region, from Slovakia and from Slovenia. In terms of the main conclusions, one of the big points was that actually the innovations supporting the transition to the green economy, that they shouldn't be beneficial only for the planet, but should be beneficial also for the people in terms of job creation and income creation, and make also business sense. So actually create money for the innovative companies, which probably somewhat echoes also maybe the conclusions from the other panel. We had some discussion of the types of innovation that will be involved. Of course, some of them will be incremental, and this will be, by incremental, we mean a small fine-tuning of particular technological process, small improvement here and there. But what will be needed will be also systemic innovation. So innovations going across systems, for instance, across a transport system, across energy distribution. Maybe one example of this systemic innovation will be also the arrival to a circular economy by means of closed manufacturing systems. And here, what was maybe highlighted will be also the importance of the design phase, because it will not be possible to arrive to these systems by just connecting as an afterthought some of these incremental innovations here and there. Actually, the systems will need to be designed from the onset, and also the products will need to be designed actually for the closed manufacturing. Now, coming to some of the role of the public funding, of course, there was a question how important the public funding is for supporting the innovation. There, quite obviously, it was highlighted that the role is to primarily overcome the risky aspects, where for instance, the companies would be hesitant to go, and availability of public funding encouraging actually the mobilization of resources. But it touched also on another role of the public support, which is not only the bag of money, but you need to keep in mind that many of the innovators are SMEs which have no time to keep searching for the different grant conditions, for the availability of money, may actually concentrate on their own work, and there the governments can have a role also by setting up the advice on the availability of different funding sources and on encouraging networking, because they may be aware of developments in other sectors which may be surprisingly relevant. So with this I would conclude.
Thank you very much. That concludes our conclusions from the parallel session. I hope it was useful, not only from the next work of the ministry, but also for you, so that you know what you missed out, which is always the risk when you have multiple parallel sessions. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I will not kindly ask you to step down from the podium so that we can move in our program. Thank you. And we will hear some more of a conclusion from a very specific perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now welcome here on the stage Mr. Daniel Calejai Crespo, Director General from DG Environment of the European Commission. Welcome. Who will be speaking primarily from the, whatever you wish, from the European policy perspective, being himself for a very long time within the European Commission active on various topics, SMEs, and most lately for environment and environmental legislation.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure to be with you today, and I would like to say that as Director General of DG Environment of the European Commission, I would like to start by warmly thanking our hosts. I think the Slovak presidency is doing a very good job, and I think this conference is a perfect example of how to bring forward solutions, proposals, initiatives to address one of the biggest challenges that we have ahead of us. And one of the biggest challenges that we have ahead of us is ensuring this transition to the green economy, ensuring this transition to more sustainable development, ensuring this transition to the circular economy. You can call it in many different ways, but what are we talking about? We are talking about the need that we have to change the way in which we are developing our societies, our economies. It is an absolute necessity. We cannot continue developing in the way we are doing without having a serious impact in our planet. If you look at the situation globally, the experts are speaking more and more about the boundaries of the planet. In the next decades, if nothing is done, we will need 6 planets to continue our economic development. This is why the transition to the green economy is such an important concept. And this is why it was very important over these 2 days to listen to solutions. And I liked very much the way our panelists were describing their discussions, because they were all solutions-oriented. Solutions provided by national and European policymakers in terms of getting the right incentives, the right policy frameworks. Solutions provided by the civil society, key role for the local and regional authorities, for the cities, green cities. You know, we have an initiative of the green capital of Europe. Ljubljana is this year, next year will be Essen, last year it was Bristol. The whole idea is that we have many green capitals of Europe every day, every week, every year, because cities have a key role to play. Solutions brought by business, by SMEs, by companies, by citizens, by eco-entrepreneurs, because this is a very important element. Solutions provided by innovation to meet our future challenges, but also the daily challenges that we are seeing. And finally, it was mentioned also solutions coming from the banking, from the investment sector. There is a great debate on how are we going to finance the transition to the green economy. And this has been quantified, and the challenge that we have ahead to decarbonize our economy, to develop sustainably, is enormous. The good news is that all the financial institutions are realizing that funds have to be mobilized, that we need more green finance, and that we need also to shift the financing of fossil fuels, of solutions which are not sustainable, and also to move into this big direction. So it is very encouraging that so many actors are already engaged in this agenda, and I think out of the 6 panels comes a message. And the message is that the environment and the economy depend on each other. This concept that environment, sustainable development, is incompatible with competitiveness, I think it is less and less valid. It is no longer true. The economy and the environment have to work together because they can be the best way to promote growth and jobs, but also because they are also it's an absolute necessity for our societies. I would like to say a few words about what the EU is doing, because the European Union, the European Commission, has a very ambitious agenda in this field. Over the coming years, probably the most important project we have is putting in place the circular economy agenda. We adopted at the end of last year our strategy. And our strategy is called Closing the Loop, moving from a linear economic model where you produce, you consume, and you throw away, to this circular economy where from the moment you are extracting your resources, you are designing your product, you are transforming it, you are consuming, and you are recycling, you are actually making the best use of the resources so that we can be more energy efficient, so that we can be more sustainable, and so that we can also be more competitive, because there is an economic benefit, there is an environmental benefit, and there is a very important social benefit in terms of growth and jobs and innovations. EU businesses will benefit because they will be more competitive. Citizens will win from the creation of sustainable jobs. And very importantly, the environment will win as the pressures on our natural resources diminish. This ambitious agenda has been supported by the Environment Council in June, the European Economic and Social Committee, the European Parliament, and we are now working closely with all the member states because we have an agenda of more than 50 measures covering the whole life cycle of products, looking at green public procurement, looking at eco-design, looking at standards, looking at how to transform waste into energy, looking at regulation, yes, but also voluntary measures, economic incentives, measures at national and local level, and we will be coming next year with a proposal on water reuse and a strategy on plastics. These are key, important proposals for the future of our planet, for the future of our societies. By 2018, we will have completed our analysis also of the interface between chemical products and waste legislation. And we are also overhauling the waste legislation because Europe needs to do more recycling and less landfilling, and we need to be able to be more efficient and to avoid that so much waste gets back into the planet, and we have to be able to correct the situation. It is also important to note that this is not just ideas, that there are important funding opportunities. And I'm sure that my colleague from DG Research will mention them, but I will just mention how important it is innovation. Horizon 2020, the most important innovation program in the world.
Conclude.
80 billion euros in total with significant benefits for the circular economy, and the European Fund for Strategic Investment. There is also a very important international agenda, opportunities for business to do that and to support developing countries. Final message, because I don't want to be out of time, this is not just a message for member states, for institutions. The most important thing is the citizens. What we are doing is for the benefit of our European citizens. 95% of European citizens believe that the biggest added value which Europe can bring in their lives is sustainable development and the environment. 67% would like the EU to do more to protect the environment. As policymakers, we need to deliver, we need to fulfill the hopes of European citizens, we need to engage with member states, with stakeholders, with all the authorities, and these are not easy times for Europe. We have many crises going ahead, but there is a crisis where we cannot fail. And this is the crisis of the planet, because the life of our future generations depend us on doing all we can to live responsibly within the limits of the planet. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much to Mr. Calleja Crespo. You may sit down. Thank you. We heard about the ambitions that the European Union has, but how does this ambition fit to a more global effort, more global picture? We will hear more from that from Mr. Jan Dusik, who is a regional director and regional representative of the regional office of the UNEP for Europe.
Thank you very much, and I can continue where Daniel Calleja finished with the people. That of course, when we are looking at the solutions, concepts for green economy, they need to happen at all levels, starting from local, through national, regional, EU, pan-European, global, but what counts is that they speak to the people. The green economy needs to become an everyday business. It should go beyond the theoretical concepts, beyond discussions on definitions, beyond acronyms which no one understands. So the people need to be in the center. That's my message number one. Message number two, it is linked to the important global processes. Rio Plus 20 conference in 2012 has started the development of the Sustainable Development Goals. We now have them in place. They need to be localized. They should not be a straitjacket of a global framework. They need to be understood by the people and translated into reality. They are universal. They apply to every member state of the EU as well as every other country in the world. And they bring the integration, not sidelining environment because of economy, not sidelining social because of environment. They need to come together. The third point I want to make is that there is enough money in the system, in the world. It's just the way we channel the money, we prioritize their use, how we work with the central banks, with the financial markets, international financing institutions, how we can translate the language of the environmentalists into the economic language. Just one figure, if we take the reform of the fossil fuel subsidies, we would immediately have sufficient funds of almost $3 trillion per year that would manage to implement the Sustainable Development Goals in the developing countries, and so forth. The fourth message, again referring to Daniel Kalecha, is the power of innovations and the solutions which are available worldwide. The private sector can be a great driver. The competitiveness drive will help. The big agenda of cities, there will be a major conference on habitat later this autumn. The research findings need to translate into practices. Circularity will bring solutions which we don't know today, but they will come on board. The Paris Agenda, the climate agreement will also trigger new solutions that will develop as we implement the conclusions. The fifth message is on the pan-European cooperation, and there I think that Slovakia and the Slovak presidency of the European Union is in a unique position. We have just come out of a big minister meeting of the European ministers in Batumi, Georgia. There is an agreement on the Big E, the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy, with more than 100 concrete actions pledged by the countries, and it confirms that this region, Europe, can be a lead region for the rest of the world, and we as UN Environment are able to support this process. And my final sixth point is on the external responsibility that Europe has. We have significant resources going to official development assistance. The Green Climate Fund is being implemented. The international financing institutions have their policy directions, the foreign investment. These all should go through whatever we call it. We could call it a fitness check of green economy. We could call it in other ways, but simply whatever action is being taken from now on should be seen from the optics of compatibility with sustainable development, with green economy. Let me conclude that we are all on the same boat. We are living within the planetary boundaries. We don't have 6 planets. We will never have them. And many of us were on the boat on the Danube River yesterday, so we can take that parallel that we need to find a way to live together in that one boat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dusik, for your remarks on the global perspective. And we will come back to a cross-cutting issue that links both the European and the global perspective with Mr. Renzo Tomellini, who is head of unit strategy at the DG Research and Innovation, Climate Action and Resources. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Where did you find such an ugly picture? I mean, probably when I was in the airport and my flight was announced to be cancelled. Okay. Tomorrow afternoon I will meet my Commissioner Moedas, and what I will report? I will report a complete consensus. That's what I record from the assembly here, the political masters and all the stakeholders, the very various stakeholders to the needed transition to green economy, to an environmentally, economically and socially sustainable development, to a move from linearity to circularity. There has been a richness of understanding because I got different messages. Green or circular economy, emphasis on energy transport or on a sustainable reindustrialization of Europe. Incremental or disruptive innovation, resource efficiency or totally new solutions, progress in technologies or new business models, company social responsibility or new role for citizens, financing or education, research or fiscal measures, and so on, and so on, and so on. So very rich, and so the message is the need of an integrated systemic approach. Need for integrated systemic approach, but Bratislava City Council representative this morning warned us and say it is easier to build up a new dam than to have an integrated project. Very interesting, also a message for me to bring home about the support to integrated projects that is easy to say, not easy to do. It's easy to talk the talk and less easy to walk the talk, as was mentioned before. The path is inevitable. Director General Calleja was saying, otherwise we need 6 planets, and we don't have 6 blue and green planets. And economically, Europe must lead to secure our potential to export technologies and solutions. So this need for leadership, President Obama said that America wants to lead, so the competition is open in sustainability. Solutions and technologies are on the shelves, are in the cupboard, no, they are not there. So we need research and innovation. We need an effort in research and innovation to make tomorrow possible what today is not yet possible. Also, like Commissioner Vella mentioned yesterday, for the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals, because some of the goals are contradictory. So we have to make this possible. We have to go on this ladder of implementability of the Sustainable Development Goals. Europe has this extremely important research and innovation program, Horizon 2020. There has been already the decision with the allocation of funds for 2016 and 2017 to set aside, allocate 650 million euros for circular economy. So this responds to Director General Calleja encouragement. And overall, in the entire framework program Horizon 2020, 60% of the funds are spent for sustainable development. This means 6.5 billion euros every year open to the world, because Horizon 2020 is open to all researchers from all over the world who want to work together on sustainability and on an agenda that is set via the Horizon 2020. So, what do I bring home? What I tell my commissioner, the encouragement to continue, to go on, to proceed on this way, and to do possible more. Last word is thank you to the Slovak organizers. You have been fantastic. Congratulations for this event, and so congratulations to you for these splendid 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomellini. And that concludes our lineup of very distinguished speakers that we have on this conference. So last but not least, it is my pleasure to give the word back to the host of this conference, to the Minister of Environment of the Slovak Republic, Mr. László Sojmos. Please, the floor is yours.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne za slovo. Vážené dámy, vážení páni, dovolte mi ešte raz sa vám poďakovať za aktívnu účasť na našej konferencii a samozrejme za veľmi podnetné prezentácie, vstupy a diskusiu. Rád by som sa týmto poďakoval všetkým diskutujúcim za ich aktívne zapojenie sa do diania. Som rád, že sme sa počas predchádzajúcich 2 dní zhodli na nutnosti nasmerovať náš budúci rozvoj smerom k zelenej ekonomike. Možno sa rôznia naše názory na ambície, na spôsoby a rýchlosť tohto procesu, ale teší ma, že sme si všetci vedomi toho, že koncept zelenej ekonomiky je a bude dominovať diskusiám v nadchádzajúcom období a je našou úlohou zavádzať ho do každodennej praxe, do individuálnej až po globálnu úroveň. Vážené dámy, vážení páni, včera pri otvorení konferencie som vyjadril presvedčenie, že len spoločnou spoluprácou môžeme prispieť k vytvoreniu lepšej a udržateľnej budúcnosti. Som rád, že táto konferencia dokázala, že nikomu z nás nechýba ochota k takejto spolupráci. Diskusie počas predchádzajúcich 2 dní znovu potvrdili, že v Európe máme vybudovaný robustný systém na monitoring čiastkových politík prispievajúcich prechodu na zelenú ekonomiku. Či už je to štatistický systém, reportingový a monitorovací systém stavu životného prostredia, správy o pokroku v obehovej ekonomike, stave energetickej únie a podobne. Čo nám pravdepodobne chýba, je pravidelná možnosť neformálne diskutovať výsledky týchto hodnotiacich procesov, ktorá by pomohla hodnotiť pokrok na ceste k zelenej ekonomike s cieľom prediskutovať kroky, ktoré sú potrebné do budúcnosti. Navrhujeme preto vytvoriť fórum. Nazvime ho Bratislava Green Economy Process, ktoré by mohlo nadviazať formátom na dnešnú konferenciu a umožnilo pravidelnú výmenu názorov, širokú diskusiu a zhodnotenie pokroku smerom k zelenej ekonomike aj v kontexte strategických dokumentov Európskej únie ako stratégie Európa 2020 alebo 7. environmentálneho akčný balíček programu a podobne. Je mojou ambíciou prediskutovať možnosť a zistiť záujem o vytvorenie takéhoto fóra s mojimi kolegami z OECD koncom mesiaca v Paríži a počas environmentálnej rady s ministrami životného prostredia a klímy krajín Európskej únii v októbri v Luxemburgu. Záverom by som sa vám všetkým chcel ešte raz veľmi pekne poďakovať za účasť, za podnetné diskusie a zaželať vám aj príjemný zvyšok pobytu v Bratislave a na Slovensku a potom šťastnú cestu domov. Dovolte mi tiež poďakovať sa našim partnerom, sponzorom a moderátorom za spoluprácu pri príprave na konferenciu. No a samozrejme moje vďaka patrí aj prekladateľom a celému realizačnému tímu z Ministerstva životného prostredia a agentúre Motion Zone, ktorí sa postarali o prípravu a bezproblémový priebeh celého podujatia. Ďakujem pekne ešte raz.
So the words of Minister Solymosh brings us to the very end of this conference. Let me therefore also from my part thank you very much, first of all you participants, all the speakers. I hope you enjoy the time that you spend here, that you maybe have some new contacts that you can enjoy in your future professional careers and undertakings. And let me also once again thank all the people and all the organizations and companies that had anything to do with this conference and that they brought you this conference. Those are the partners, also the sponsors, the media partners, and if I may, on a more personal note, also the very dedicated team that for the last few days made everything possible and impossible to put this conference together. Thank you very much, and I think it deserves applause. Thank you. Again, housekeeping remarks. There is a lunch served for you here at the venue and also upstairs. And those of you who subscribed for the site visits, they are listed here. You are expected at 2 p.m. Thank you very much and have a safe trip home.